the hunger and the crime. The city was dark even in the middle of the day. Tall buildings of stone and metal blocked the light. The air smelled of smoke and fear. People walked with their heads down, moving quickly, afraid to be noticed by the alien guards who ruled the streets. No one smiled. No one laughed. Hunger was everywhere. Among these tired faces was a mother. Her name was not important to the crowd, but to her child she was the whole world. She walked slowly, holding her stomach with one hand. Her other hand clutched a small piece of cloth, the only thing she could use to keep her child warm at night. Her clothes were torn, her shoes broken, but her eyes still carried a fire, a strength that refused to die. Her child waited near the corner of the street. The boy was thin, his cheeks hollow, his lips dry. He sat on a step, too weak to stand for long. His small arms hugged his knees. When he looked up at his mother, his eyes were full of trust and hope, though his stomach twisted in pain. He whispered softly, "Mama, I'm hungry." The mother's heart broke. For 3 days she had found nothing. No bread, no fruit, not even a single crumb. The aliens had taken most of the food for themselves. The stores that still sold to humans charged prices higher than she could ever pay. Work was gone. Money was gone. Pride was gone. Only her child remained, and she could not watch him starve. Her eyes turned toward a small store. Its windows were cracked, its shelves thin, but there was still food inside. She had passed it many times before. Each time she told herself she would never steal. But today her son's weak voice echoed in her ears. She had no choice. The street was busy, but no one looked at her. No one cared. Everyone had their own pain. She pulled her coat tighter and walked slowly to the door of the store. Her hands shook, but her steps did not stop. Inside, the shop smelled of dried bread and spoiled fruit. A single lamp buzzed above her. The shopkeeper sat behind the counter, his eyes tired, counting the few coins he had earned. She moved toward the shelves. Every step felt heavy. Every breath felt loud. She saw a small loaf of bread wrapped in paper sitting alone. She reached for it with trembling fingers, glancing around. The shopkeeper did not look up. A cold sweat covered her skin. Her heart beat like a drum. She slipped the bread under her coat, pressing it against her chest as if hiding a treasure. She turned quickly, heading for the door. Her son was waiting just outside. Just a few more steps, she thought. Just a few more steps and he would eat tonight. But fate is never kind to the desperate. The moment she touched the door, a sharp sound filled the air. An alarm, a loud piercing cry that echoed through the street. The lamp above flickered red. The bread slipped slightly in her coat. Her eyes widened in terror. The shopkeeper jumped up, pointing at her with shaking hands. His voice cut through the noise. "Thief! She's stealing." The street outside turned silent. Heads lifted, eyes turned toward her. The boy, still sitting on the step, looked up in fear. "Mama," he whispered. The mother froze. Her body refused to move. She wanted to run, but her legs felt like stone. The bread pressed against her heart. Her son's weak eyes begged her not to stop. But the sound of heavy boots was already coming closer. From the end of the street, 2 alien guards appeared. They were tall, their armor black, their faces hidden behind masks of steel. Their eyes glowed with cold blue light. Each step they took shook the ground. People moved aside, pressing themselves against the walls, not daring to be in their way. The mother's hands shook. She looked at her son. She looked at the guards. There was no escape. The guards entered the store. Their voices were deep, filled with cruelty. "What happened here?" one demanded. The shopkeeper pointed at her. His finger was sharp as a knife. "She stole food. She thought she could take without paying." The guards turned to her. Their glowing eyes scanned her from head to toe. They did not see a mother. They did not see hunger. They only saw a thief. One stepped forward and grabbed her arm with iron strength. She gasped in pain. The bread slipped from her coat, falling to the ground. The boy cried out, "Mama," but no one moved to help. The second guard picked up the bread, holding it high for all to see. "Food theft," he growled. "The punishment is death," the crowd whispered in fear. No one dared to speak. No one dared to move. The boy tried to stand, but his legs failed him. He fell back onto the step, tears streaming down his face. His small voice shook as he cried, "Please, don't hurt my mama." But the guards did not care. They dragged the mother toward the street, their grip cruel and merciless. She looked back one last time at her child. Her lips trembled, but she forced a smile. It's okay, she whispered, though her heart knew it was not. The crowd watched in silence. No one dared to interfere. Fear ruled the city, and in that moment it seemed the story of the hungry child and the desperate mother would end in tragedy. But in the back of the crowd, someone moved. A man. His eyes burned not with fear but with anger, his fist clenched at his sides. He could no longer stay silent, and as the guards pulled the mother into the street, he took his first step forward. The guards dragged the mother into the open street. Their black armor shone under the weak sun, their blue eyes glowing like fire. The sound of chains rattled as one of them pulled a metal cuff from his belt. The crowd stepped back, making a circle around the scene. No one wanted to be too close, yet no one could look away. The mother stumbled, trying to stay on her feet. Her arm hurt where the guard's claws pressed into her skin. The bread lay crushed on the ground, forgotten. Her son crawled toward her, his knees scraping against the stone road. "Mama," he cried again, his voice breaking. One guard kicked the bread aside. "Food belongs to the order," he said coldly. "Humans are not allowed to take without permission." The shopkeeper stood near the doorway, his eyes nervous but proud. He had caught a thief, and perhaps the guards would reward him. His hands trembled slightly, though. Deep down, he knew she had stolen only for her child. But fear made him silent. Fear made him cruel. The guards forced the mother to her knees. Dust rose around her. Her hair fell forward, covering her face. Her lips trembled, but she refused to cry. If she cried, her son would see weakness. She wanted him to remember her strength, not her fear. The boy tried to run to her, but a guard's heavy hand pushed him back. He fell hard to the ground, coughing. The people gasped softly, but still no one moved. Helping a thief meant sharing her punishment, and punishment was death. The guards began their chant, the words of the alien law. Their deep voices echoed through the narrow street. Theft is crime. Crime is chaos. Chaos is death. They repeated it slowly, like a song of doom. The mother closed her eyes. The boy screamed and struggled, but no one helped him. The guards lifted her up by the arms, preparing to march her toward the square. That was where all punishments were carried out, in front of the city, so everyone would remember their fear. The crowd murmured in horror. Some turned away, unable to watch. Others watched with cold faces, too used to such scenes. The boy cried until his throat hurt. He reached out his small hand, but his mother was already being dragged away. "Please, she only wanted bread. Please." His voice cracked, echoing down the street, but the guards did not care. They did not see a mother. They did not see a child. They only saw the law. The mother struggled weakly. "Please," she whispered, looking up at them.
"He is hungry."
"Take me, but give him food." The guards laughed. A cruel, hollow sound. "Hungry?" One sneered. "Let him starve. One less human is no loss." The words cut deeper than chains. The boy froze, shocked. His tears stopped for a moment, as if his body could not handle more pain. The mother shook her head. She felt her strength leaving, but her heart still burned with love. She wished she could hold him one last time. And then it happened. From the crowd, a voice rose, strong, calm, and human. "Enough!" The guards turned sharply. The crowd fell silent. A man stepped forward. He was not large, but he carried himself with a strange power. His clothes were simple, his face ordinary, but his eyes burned with something the guards had not seen in years. Defiance. The crowd gasped. No one ever spoke against the guards. To do so was to sign one's death. The boy's eyes widened. He had never seen this man before, but hope flickered inside him. The guards glared at the stranger. "You dare speak?" One growled. The man did not look away. "She is not a criminal. She is a mother." His voice carried over the street, steady and unshaken. "You will not harm her," the crowd whispered among themselves. Some felt fear. Others felt something they had forgotten long ago. Courage. The guard stepped closer, towering over the man. "Do you want her fate too?" One hissed. The glow in their eyes brightened, their weapons humming with energy. The man did not move. He stood firm, his fists clenched at his sides. "If you punish her, you must punish me too." The boy's heart leapt. For the first time, someone stood with them. His small voice whispered, "Please, save my mama." The guards roared with laughter. Their voices echoed like thunder. "One man against the order?" They mocked. "You will be crushed." But the man's eyes did not waver. Behind him, something began to stir in the crowd. People straightened. A woman lifted her head. A man clenched his jaw. The guards noticed, their laughter fading into silence. The mother looked up at the stranger, her eyes wide with shock. She had never seen anyone risk themselves for her. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her son's hand reached for the stranger's coat, holding on tightly as if this man were a shield against the whole world. The guard stood still, unsure for the first time. The circle of fear was breaking. The crowd was watching, waiting, and the man's voice, calm but full of fire, cut through the silence once more. She only wanted bread. But what you are about to start may be far greater than hunger. The street was silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. The guards, tall and cruel in their black armor, stood frozen. The mother, still kneeling, looked up at the stranger who had spoken. The boy clung to the man's coat, eyes wide with desperate hope. No one had ever dared to speak against the guards. No one. The stranger stood firm. His hair was dark, his face worn by years of hardship. He was no soldier, no hero. He looked like any other human in the city, thin, tired, carrying invisible scars of hunger and loss. But there was something different about his eyes. They carried no fear. The guards broke the silence with harsh laughter. Their voices boomed, echoing against the stone walls. "A human dares to challenge us?" One sneered. "You must be mad." The stranger did not move. His voice was calm, steady. "She is not a thief. She is a mother. And if you punish her, you punish me." The words fell like stones into the silence. The crowd stirred. Heads lifted. Eyes that had been lowered in fear began to rise. The guards noticed the shift. Fear was slipping away like sand through their hands. The boy clutched the man tighter. "Don't leave us," he whispered. The stranger glanced down for a brief second. His eyes softened, and he placed a steady hand on the child's shoulder. Then he looked back at the guards, his face like stone. The first guard stepped forward, his boots heavy against the ground. His weapon hummed with energy, glowing faint blue. "Do you want to die for her?" he asked. The stranger's voice was firm. "I want her to live." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The words were dangerous, but they carried a strange power. A woman at the back of the crowd whispered to her neighbor, "He's not afraid." The neighbor whispered back, "Maybe. Maybe we don't have to be either." The mother trembled, her heart racing. She had never seen anyone defend her before. No one had ever stepped between her and the cruelty of the order. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but her voice failed her. Only her eyes spoke, filled with tears and disbelief. The second guard raised his weapon higher. "Last warning," he growled. "Step aside or share her fate." The stranger did not move. He did not blink. His voice was calm but strong. "If you strike her, the crowd will see your fear. If you strike me, they will see your weakness." The guards hesitated. It was true. The crowd was no longer silent shadows. People were standing straighter, their eyes locked on the scene. The balance of power, once so heavy on the side of the aliens, seemed to tremble. The boy looked at the stranger as if he were more than a man, as if he were hope itself. His small voice broke the silence. "He's brave. Braver than all of us," the crowd heard him. And the truth of his words spread through them like fire through dry grass. The first guard snarled, stepping closer. "You think one voice can stop us?" he hissed. The stranger's reply was quiet, but it carried across the street. "One voice is enough to begin." The crowd shifted again. A man clenched his fists. A woman took a step forward. A teenager whispered, "He's right." The fear that had chained them for so long was starting to crack. The guards saw it. For the first time, unease flickered in their glowing eyes. The mother found her voice at last. She lifted her head, her voice shaking but clear. "Please, he is right. I am not a thief. I am only a mother. My son is hungry." Her words struck the crowd harder than any weapon. They had all felt the same hunger. They had all seen their children cry at night. They had all known despair. Her voice was not just hers, it was theirs. The stranger placed himself between her and the guards, his arms spread slightly as if shielding both mother and child. "You call this justice," he said firmly. "But the people see the truth, and the truth is stronger than fear." The crowd murmured louder now, no longer afraid of their own voices. The guards looked at each other, uncertain. This was no longer a simple punishment. This was something dangerous. The boy pressed his face into the stranger's coat, whispering again, "Don't leave us." And the man's answer was soft, but unshakable. "I won't." The mother stared at him, her heart torn between fear and hope. Who was this man? Why would he risk everything for her? She did not know. But she felt something she had not felt in years. Belief. The guards raised their weapons higher, but their hands trembled slightly. They were used to silence. They were used to obedience. But now the silence was broken, and the stranger's eyes, burning with quiet fire, met theirs without fear. The battle had not begun yet, but something greater already had. The awakening of courage. The street had become a stage. The mother knelt in the dust, her arms held tightly by one guard. The boy clung to the stranger's side, refusing to let go. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, their whispers rising like wind before a storm. The guards were furious. No one had ever dared to block their judgment. Their glowing blue eyes fixed on the stranger, the human who stood tall with nothing but courage. The first guard shoved the mother harder into the ground. "You dare protect a thief?" he thundered. His voice shook the air. "This woman is guilty. The law is clear. The law is final." The stranger's face did not move. His voice was calm but sharp. "The law is not justice, and the people see it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The people knew those words were dangerous. Speaking against the law was treason. Punishment was worse than death. It was torture, exile, or vanishing forever into the alien prisons. Yet the man spoke without trembling. The second guard stepped forward. He towered over the stranger, his weapon humming with deadly light. He lowered it just enough for the glow to touch the man's chest. The energy burned faintly against his coat, warning of what would come next. "You have one chance," the guard growled. "Step aside. Leave the woman to her fate, or your body will be ash before the crowd." The mother's breath caught. She shook her head weakly. "Don't do this," she whispered. "Please, save yourself." But the stranger did not step back. He placed his arm gently behind him, shielding the boy, and raised his eyes to the guard. "If you want her life, you must take mine first." The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. Some pressed forward. Others grabbed each other's arms, unable to believe what they were hearing. A man in the crowd whispered, "He's going to be killed." Another whispered back, "No, maybe not. Look around." For indeed something strange was happening. The people no longer looked away. They no longer kept their heads down. Their eyes were on the guards. And they were not filled with fear alone. There was anger now. Anger that had slept too long. The first guard noticed it. His voice became harsher, louder, trying to crush the shift. "Silence!" he roared at the crowd. "Look away or share her fate." But no one moved. No one lowered their head. The stranger's voice cut through the tension. "You fear their eyes," he said to the guards. "You fear their voices. Because if one mother can stand and if one man can stand, then the rest will rise." The guards froze. His words carried like fire. The people's silence was no longer submission. It was pressure waiting to explode. The boy looked up at the stranger with wide eyes. "Are you not afraid?" he whispered. The man leaned down just slightly, his voice quiet but strong. "I am afraid, but I will not bow." The guards raised their weapons higher, their blue glow now fierce and deadly. "Then you will die first," one hissed. The crowd trembled, unsure if they should run or stay. A woman shouted, "Stop this madness!" Another man muttered, "He is right. He is right." The mother struggled against the guard's grip, shouting through tears, "Please don't hurt him. He is only trying to help me." But the stranger lifted his hand, silencing her gently. "Do not beg for me," he said softly. "They cannot take what is freely given." The guards aimed at him now, their weapons humming with sharp energy. For a moment, the entire street seemed to hold still. The wind stopped. The air thickened. The people's hearts pounded as one. And then the stranger spoke again. His voice was clear, unshaken, carrying over the heads of all who watched. "If you kill me, the people will know. They will see you for what you are, cowards in armor, afraid of hungry children." The crowd gasped. The guards stiffened. His words cut through their fear like a blade. The boy clutched his coat tighter. The mother's tears rolled silently down her face. The guards stepped closer, ready to strike. But their hesitation was clear. They were not only facing one man anymore, they were facing the eyes of the crowd. One small sound broke the silence, a child's voice from somewhere in the back. "Let her go," it cried. Then another voice rose. "Let them live." And another. "He is right." The guards turned, scanning the faces. But now there were too many voices, too many eyes. The stranger's challenge had changed everything. The mother whispered through trembling lips, "Who are you?" The man did not answer her yet. His eyes stayed locked on the guards. His body stood tall, unyielding. He knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The air grew heavier. The challenge was made. The next move would decide everything. The street no longer felt the same. A moment ago it had been filled with silence and fear. Now it was filled with whispers, sharp and restless. The guards stood tall, weapons glowing blue, but even they sensed the change. The power they had always enjoyed was beginning to slip. The mother still knelt in the dust, her hands bound by the iron grip of one guard. Her face was pale, her hair wild, but her eyes shone with a strange light. Hope. The boy clung to the stranger's side, his small hand gripping his coat like a lifeline. The man himself did not move. His body was steady, his eyes locked on the guards. The crowd thickened. People who had been walking away stopped and turned back. Shop doors opened. Windows creaked. More faces appeared, staring down from above. The whispers grew louder, weaving together like a storm. "Why is he standing up to them?" someone muttered. "Because someone had to," another answered. The first guard raised his voice, loud and cruel. "Back away. This is no concern of yours." His weapon hummed with deadly light, flashing against the walls. "One more step and you will all share her fate." But the threat did not work the way it once had. A man in the crowd shouted back, his voice shaking but strong, "We are already sharing her fate. We are all hungry." The crowd stirred with agreement. Some clapped their hands. Others raised fists. The guards looked at each other quickly. Their armor was strong, their weapons deadly, but their control had always depended on silence, and silence was breaking. The stranger lifted his voice again, calm but powerful. "Do you hear them? Do you see them? They are not afraid anymore." The boy looked around with wide eyes. For the first time in his life, he saw his people standing taller, not bending, not bowing. His small heart filled with something new, pride. He held the stranger's hand tighter. The second guard hissed in anger. "Enough, the law will not be questioned. This woman will be punished. This man will join her, and any who follow them will burn." He lifted his weapon higher, its glow sharp and violent. The mother gasped. The boy pressed against the stranger, shaking. The crowd fell quiet again, fear returning for a brief, painful moment. But then, an old woman in the crowd stepped forward. Her back was bent, her hair white, but her eyes were fierce. She raised her voice clear and unafraid. "If they burn, I burn too. I have nothing left to lose," the crowd roared with shock. The guards froze, glaring at her. And then another voice rose. "And me." A young man pushed forward, his fists clenched. "I will not watch in silence anymore." The whispers turned into shouts. People pushed closer, no longer just spectators, but something more. A force, a wave. The guards shifted their stance, realizing the crowd was becoming dangerous. The stranger's eyes never left them. "You cannot fight us all," he said firmly. "You rule by fear, but fear ends today." The guards snarled, their blue eyes burning. "We are the law," one shouted. "And we are the people," the stranger replied. His words hit harder than any weapon. The mother's heart pounded. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. For so long, no one had dared to speak, to move, to resist, and now because of one man, the people were standing. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of something new. Faith. The boy's small voice broke through the noise. "Please let my mama go," he said, his words soft but piercing. The crowd fell quiet for a moment, hearing the innocence in his voice. Even the guards hesitated. The silence lasted only a second, but it was heavy, powerful. The stranger used it. He stepped forward, placing himself fully between the guards and the mother. "You will not harm her," he declared. "Not while I stand." The guards lifted their weapons in unison, energy crackling in the air. The crowd gasped. Some screamed. But no one ran. They held their ground. The air was thick with tension, ready to break. The boy clutched his mother's hand now, pulling her closer. The mother whispered, trembling, "Why are you doing this for us?" The stranger glanced at her briefly. "Because no one ever did it for me," he said quietly. Then he looked back at the guards. His eyes burned like fire. The guards shouted together, their voices booming, "Stand down or die." The crowd shouted back as one, louder than ever, "Let them live." The sound shook the walls. The guards stepped back slightly, uncertain. For the first time, the people had spoken together. For the first time, the order had been challenged by more than one voice. The tension was unbearable. The next move could unleash blood or freedom. The stranger stood tall, unshaken, waiting. The guards raised their weapons higher, trembling with rage. The crowd pushed closer, refusing to bow again. And in that fragile moment between fire and fear, the world itself seemed to pause. The street trembled with voices. What began as whispers had grown into shouts, and now it sounded like thunder rolling through the city. The crowd no longer hid their faces. They no longer looked at the ground. Their eyes were lifted, sharp and alive. The guards stood in the center, weapons glowing with cold blue fire. Their armor shone, but their confidence cracked. They had faced many crowds before, but always crowds that obeyed, crowds that feared. This was different. This crowd was breathing as one body, and its heartbeat was anger. The stranger stood tall, still between the mother and the guards. His coat shifted in the wind, his jaw tight, his eyes unblinking. He did not need a weapon. His courage had already become a weapon stronger than steel. The boy clung to his mother's arm, but his eyes stayed fixed on the man. He whispered almost to himself, "He's not afraid. Not even of them." The mother pulled the boy closer, shielding him, but she too could not look away from the stranger. Her heart pounded wildly, torn between terror and awe. She had expected death today, but now she saw something else rising. The first guard roared, trying to crush the fire with fear. "You are nothing. You are dirt under our boots. You cannot fight the order." His voice echoed like thunder, but it did not silence the people. Instead, the crowd shouted back. "We are not nothing," one man cried. "We are human, yes," another voice shouted. "We are not slaves." The shouts grew louder, crashing together, filling the street until the walls themselves seemed to shake. The second guard raised his weapon high, its energy pulsing dangerously. "Silence," he bellowed. "One more word and I will burn this street to ashes." But the words came anyway, stronger, louder. "Let them go. No more chains. We will not bow." The guards glanced at each other, uneasy. Their power had always been absolute, but now the people were many, and their courage was spreading like fire across dry grass. The stranger stepped forward, his voice steady. "Do you see it? Your fear has ended. You cannot rule what you cannot break," the first guard snarled. "You think one voice changed them?" The stranger's eyes burned. "Not one voice. All of them, listen." And the crowd answered, roaring as one, "Let them live." The sound was so great it seemed to shake the very ground. Birds burst into flight from the rooftops. Even the shopkeeper who had accused the mother stepped back, his pride broken, his eyes wide with guilt. The mother's lips trembled. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the people, her people standing together for the first time in years. Her son's small hand clutched hers tightly, his face glowing with hope. The guards tried to steady themselves. "We are the law," one shouted again, but the words no longer carried the same weight. The stranger answered with a voice that cut like a blade. "No, you are the chain, and chains can be broken." The people roared in agreement, fists lifted into the air. The street shook with their fury. The guards took a step back. For the first time, they looked uncertain. The boy whispered to his mother, his voice filled with wonder. "Are we winning?" She held him close, her voice breaking. I don't know. But something has changed." The second guard lowered his weapon slightly. His blue eyes flickered as he scanned the crowd. He saw men and women ready to fight, children refusing to run, elders standing tall despite their age. He saw not prey but resistance. The stranger pointed at them, his voice loud and fierce. "You are outnumbered. You are outmatched. Leave now, or face the storm you created." The guards growled, but hesitation gnawed at them. Their armor was strong but not unbreakable. Their weapons were deadly but not endless. And this crowd was no longer a collection of weak, hungry humans. It was something greater. The mother raised her head, her voice trembling but strong. "Please, for once listen. Let us live. Let us be free," her words hit deep. The crowd went quiet, every face turned toward her. It was not the stranger this time. It was her voice, a mother's voice filled with pain and truth. And the silence that followed was heavier than thunder. The guards froze, caught between anger and fear. The stranger leaned forward, his words quiet but sharp. "This is your last chance." The crowd pressed closer, their eyes burning. The boy's heart pounded, his small body trembling. But for the first time he smiled. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. Sparks danced in the air. The crowd braced, ready. The mother held her son close, whispering a prayer. The world balanced on a knife's edge. And then, the guards stepped back. One step, then another. The blue glow of their weapons dimmed. The crowd gasped, their eyes widening. The order had never stepped back before. The turning point had come. The street was silent once more, but it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of disbelief. The two alien guards had stepped back. Their weapons, once burning with blue fire, now glowed faintly. Their towering bodies, once symbols of power, looked smaller against the sea of human eyes staring them down. The crowd had done what no one thought possible. They had forced the order to hesitate. The stranger stood tall in the center, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. His hands were empty, yet his presence filled the street more than the guards' glowing weapons. He did not smile, but his eyes held a fire that spread to everyone who looked at him. The mother clutched her son tightly, afraid to breathe, afraid the moment might shatter. The boy peeked out from her arms, his wide eyes watching the guards retreat. For the first time in his young life, he saw them move backward, not forward. He whispered softly, almost in awe, "They're leaving." The crowd whispered too, their voices carrying the same shock. "They are stepping back. They are afraid." The guards exchanged a glance. Their pride was broken, their authority cracked. If they attacked now, the crowd would erupt. If they walked away, they would carry shame back to their masters. It was a choice they had never faced before. The first guard growled, his deep voice struggling to mask his unease. "This is not the end," he spat. "You think this moment matters? The order will crush you." But the words did not have the same power. They fell flat against the air, heavy with human voices. The stranger stepped forward, his voice calm but sharp as iron. Maybe the order will come again. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. But today you step back. Today we stand." The crowd erupted with cheers, a roar that shook the walls. Fists rose into the air. Children clapped their hands. Women wept openly, not from fear but from the release of it. Even the old and weak lifted their heads higher. The guards snarled, but their weapons lowered completely. Step by step they backed away, swallowed by the wave of human voices. And then, they were gone. The people stood frozen for a moment, hardly believing it. Then, as if a spell had been broken, the street came alive with sound. Laughter, tears, cheers, and chants filled the air. It was as if chains had been lifted from every throat at once. The mother sank to the ground, her arms wrapped around her boy. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she kissed his head again and again. "You're safe," she whispered. "We're safe." The boy clung to her, his small arms tight around her neck. His stomach still ached with hunger, but for the first time his heart was full. The stranger turned toward them. He bent down, picked up the crushed loaf of bread and placed it gently in the boy's hands. The boy looked at it as if it were treasure, his eyes shining. "For you," the man said simply. The mother tried to speak, but her voice broke. Why would you risk everything for us? You don't even know me." The stranger's eyes softened. He shook his head slowly. "Because once someone should have stood for me. But no one did. So now I stand for you." The mother's tears flowed harder. She reached for his hand, but he gently pulled away, shaking his head. "Don't thank me. Thank yourselves. It was your voices that drove them away." And it was true. The people had felt their own power for the first time in years. They had stood together, shouted together, refused together. The fire that began with one act of courage now burned inside them all. The crowd gathered closer, cheering the stranger, calling him a hero. But he only raised his hand for silence. "Do not look at me," he said firmly. "Look at each other. This day is not mine, it is yours. Remember it." The cheers softened into nods and tears. The people understood. Something had changed forever. The stranger turned back to the mother and her son one last time. He crouched low, meeting the boy's eyes. "Be strong," he said gently. "Protect her as she protects you." The boy nodded, clutching the bread tightly. He did not fully understand, but he felt the weight of the words. The mother whispered, "Will we see you again?" The stranger stood, his eyes scanning the crowd, the broken street, the sky above. "Perhaps," he said softly. "But you don't need me anymore." And with that he stepped back into the sea of people. Faces turned to watch him, but the crowd parted, letting him go. His figure faded into the shadows, leaving only his words and his fire behind. The mother held her son close, whispering, "We are not alone." "Not anymore." The boy took a small bite of the bread, then offered the rest to his mother. She smiled through her tears, hugging him tighter. All around them, the people cheered again, louder, stronger, their voices rolling like thunder across the city. The guards were gone. Fear was gone. And in its place stood something new, hope.